The title of our conference may evoke concern. It should be viewed here in the TV, but we all know the name of the conference, Crisis of European Identity, War, Sovereignty, and the New Radicalisms. We aim to capture the intrigue surrounding the notion that something significant and not necessarily positive is unfolding before us today. When we first conceived of its title in early September, we could not have anticipated the state in which Lithuania would find itself today. Today we can no longer boast that our country's foreign security policy is firmly rooted in fundamental values, I would say. Instead, we face the likelihood of a pragmatic shift in our approach. Robert Kagan, in 2000, an American political thinker, articulated during the Iraqi War of 2003 a dichotomy between the United States, which he described as existing in the Hobbesian world, where the strong must confront extremist forces, and the European Union, represented by Germany and France, in which he saw as inhabiting Immanuel Kant's concept of perpetual peace, where conflict is not considered as a viable mean of addressing international issues. While this dichotomy today is pretty simplistic and rather outdated, I would say, it still highlights a lack of coherent framework to define Europe's position within a reality that is indeed fraught with conflicts, regardless of our preferences. In my view, at least in a way, this refers to the crisis of European identity, which is certainly not a new phenomenon. The three critical themes of this conference, war, sovereignty, and new radicalisms, are interconnected. Firstly, war. Vilnius is geographically the closest European Union's capital to Kyiv, not Warsaw, I stress. I stress the term geographically. Indeed, because if one would drive to Warsaw, to Kyiv straight from Vilnius, it is closer than from Warsaw. The war that began 1,000 days ago is definitely a defining event that impacts all our considerations. It has become a common refrain to state that if Ukraine were to fall, the Baltics would be next. This may already sound as a mantra, but it resonates with truth. The pressing question we face as a political community in Lithuania region and beyond is how we navigate what feels like a minute to midnight. Secondly, sovereignty. This term encompasses the complexities of European sovereignty amidst the conflicting world, but is even more particularly crucial for smaller countries, whose sovereignty, though perhaps not independence, may come under threat if we find ourselves negotiating an armistice in Ukraine. One should carefully consider our position, recognizing that these decisions could pose significant risks to our national interest. Third, new radicalisms, which we see in Lithuania too. These movements can no longer be overlooked. Specifically, I refer to the pressing issues that the radical or populist parties are growing upon: immigration, cultural integration, and socioeconomic issues. The center-right, in my view, should find a resolute response drawing upon self-confidence to address the concerns that resonate with our societies. All of these questions center around the question, what is Europe as the political and cultural entity? What is today's Europe's self-understanding? What are its values? And what are we willing to defend them? What are we willing to do to defend them? I recognize that I have raised more questions than answers, but I hope that our discussions over the next few hours will foster intellectually stimulating conversations around these vital issues. So therefore, I encourage all of you to participate actively, ask questions, share comments, and engage in dialogue. We have a couple of mics that could be shared to the audience, so please be active. And as according to our agenda, we are, although we're quite late, but we're still proceed accordingly, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Žygimantas Pavilionis, our great friend. Please, Žygimantas, join me. Whatever you like. perhaps there? Yes. Žygimantas Pavilionis is the member of Lithuanian Parliament, of course. He had a distinguished career in diplomatic service, former ambassador to the United States, one of the team of negotiators within the Lithuanian accession to EU and NATO, had a lot of diplomatic postings. Of course, the former chairman of Lithuanian Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee, and just recently deputy speaker of the Lithuanian Parliament. So I would now like to give a floor to Žygimantas Pavilionis for his keynote address, which is titled quite dramatically too, as our conference named too, right? Minutes to Midnight, 4 years of work for the free Europe. And right, so I will give a floor to Žygimantas afterwards. After 25-30 minutes, we will be able to ask a question or two to Žygimantas, and after which we will proceed with our agenda. Žygimantas, please.
Okay. Aš gal atsistosiu.
The way, yes?
Yeah.
Whatever way you like.
I have some notes, but more or less I don't need them. Okay, so I was asked to say a few words about 4 years that we did. I would tell, my ideas about achievements, failures, and things to do. So I will start with European stuff. So I would say we did a lot to compare with what we did, for example, in the Lithuanian presidency in 2013, and I would even go further to 2008 in Bucharest, because I think that was more or less the year when Europeans lost the will to enlarge, and they succumbed to the pressure of autocratic countries. They lost their own agenda. They were starting to accommodate agendas of Putin and other similar guys. And when you accommodate the evil starts the war with you, because they see you are weak, you don't have agenda, so you fall the victim of other agendas. So we were resisting from Bucharest to Lithuanian presidency, but we failed in Lithuanian presidency to convince Europeans to install, for example, membership perspective to association treaties. That was impossible. Finally, it was done by huge blood and loss of territories of Ukraine by this invasion. Only then we created many political coalitions, including my own little-led United for Ukraine parliamentary platform created by Andrius Kubilius, where we educated on the front lines of freedom. Mostly I made 10 trips with many naive Europeans to front lines, and I was just saying nothing. I was just putting them to those bombed buildings, to the ground, and I was looking to those French and German faces. They were saying nothing, and then on the way back to Warsaw, they were asking a lot of whiskey, they were crying and saying sorry. So we turned a lot of capitals of the EU to recognize first candidate status for Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, and then to start accession talks with Ukraine and Moldova. This is good, this is historic. It brought us to the current stage. I was coordinator of accession talks in Brussels from 1999 to 2002. I remember the huge transformation. It happened from beggar to the lion of the Baltics, to huge growth that we still continue to do. So I think Moldova and Ukraine is on a good track. I hope Polish presidency will speed up accession talks, and in most romantic Lithuanian dreams, we have those countries acceding to EU in 29. Sorry if some ambassadors think differently, but we will push for that. We have Lithuanian presence in 27, like Swedish presence in 2001. was most important for us. We closed 11 chapters under your presidency. Nobody believed until your presidency that we could join in 2002. You did it for us, Ambassador. We will do it for Ukrainians and Moldovans. Maybe for Moldovans first and Ukrainians, we'll see. The only big failure here is Georgia, and it's failing. Next Monday we have first meeting of illegitimate parliament. And my little problem here with many Europeans that they still accommodate that evil in Georgia. I am recently back from Georgia with Swedish and other great German and other cheers. Unfortunately, what I felt as former diplomat, most of the EU embassies in Tbilisi are willing to accommodate the evil. Are willing to shake the hand of Georgian dream that is a Russian puppet, smile, make little great nice diplomatic gestures, and just appease it. And this country will fall into the Russian and Chinese hand. And you know, it's very bad because across the borders you have Armenia that is trying to get on the European road, that is trying to cut the Russian chains, and Georgia is a way for Armenia to the west. So we think we have to think strategically. We do not have to recognize illegitimate stolen elections in Georgia. We have to embrace President Salome Zurabishvili, who is traveling now the West and trying to be new Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya of Georgians, and we will fight for that nation's freedom. Also on that EU level, I would mention some other kind of thematic developments that happened well during those 4 years. We've been attacked by instrumentalized migration. Not only us, Poles and many other countries, and it turned little by little understanding of Eastern frontier as not only place where we receive migrants according to Geneva Convention, but into security and defense frontier of the EU. Polish presidency will develop it further. This is good, but even better development is EU defense agenda. When big Europeans are appointing former Lithuanian Prime Minister as their defense minister, okay, defense industry minister, it's something nice. I still remember when Andrius Kubilius was the executive secretary of our Sąjūdis movement, and he was bringing that Soviet coat of arms from Independence Hall, and I still remember letters of French and Germans. Don't do it, please. Stay with Gorbachev. Russians are so nice. Don't declare that independence. And those guys who were sending letters to us, they are appointing him as defense minister of the European Union. That's a big development. And appointing another Estonian lady as a foreign minister of the EU, that's another great development. Because till Bucharest 2008, we've been receiving letters and statements, you know, that you have to stay silent, and you are stupid, you are anti-Russian, and so on. Now those guys believe into us, because we've been living with that enemy #1 of NATO and EU for 1,000 years, and we know how to deal with it. So this is good. Now let's turn to security and defense. Also, a lot of great things happened. First of all, NATO enlargement started to our region. Sweden, Finland, so great. It's historic. Baltic Sea is more and more NATO Sea. And on Ukrainian fronts is not so bad. We kind of approved and we decided together in Vilnius NATO summit that Ukrainian way is Finnish and Swedish way. We deleted map from the road of Ukraine. So we created a shortcut to membership. They just need an invitation. But yes, we failed again. I think the biggest historic mistake of Biden administration was done in Vilnius. That's why I was so much shouting at my beloved president that he didn't invite Ukraine to NATO. He did a strategic mistake. We know the psychology of Russians. You show to the Russians that you are weak. You don't know what to do. So if you don't know what to do, Russians know what to do. You know, they will do what they want because you don't have a strategy. If you don't have a strategy, like you didn't have a strategy in Bucharest NATO summit, we continue to occupy and kill because you don't have your own plan. So I hoped that maybe democratic administration will continue that story and finish that story, will invite Ukraine to NATO. Now I will go to Washington again with my European friends to test the ground and try to convince our Republican sisters and brothers for whom we've been voting after Second World War as Lithuanians in America. Maybe we fix it, maybe we not, we'll see. But on the other hand, with Trump administration, of course, we have no other way as to arm us to the, I don't know, to 3 or 4%. This is happening. We have no other choice. And even if we have different policies from Washington that we expect, I don't think that this region will ever surrender. You know, we still remember what happened with us during Second World War, so we will arm ourselves and we'll fight. Maybe this is the region that will fight, maybe it will be Nordic Baltic brothers and sisters and Poles for sure, maybe Germans, so we'll see. But we will develop our military muscles together, and I think this government will continue it. It's a survival issue, and that's a good story that happened. Okay, another interesting story that happened, I tried to cover it quickly, is Indo-Pacific story. It actually, the beginning of that story that never happened in this region and Lithuania. I'm sometimes trying to compare, you know, the old Landsbergis made a revolution, and he was the one to lead us to big Europe or transatlantic area, and the grandson Landsbergis made a big revolution to lead Lithuanians for the first time in their history to Indo-Pacific region. You know the story very well. I like that story because we decoupled from China, from the biggest autocratic enemy of democratic world. Our economy, because of that, also is growing like crazy. First time ever we defeated Estonians, and we like that, and we will continue doing it. Because we attached our economies to most competitive and innovative Indo-Pacific nations. And that's the future of the world. That's the future of technologies there. But on this file, I feel like in pre-Bucharest era. This is exactly how I felt like then I was political director, deputy foreign minister. You know, we were screaming and shouting and going to all European capitals. War is coming, Georgia will be occupied, Russia is arming itself, they will start behaving like Hitler did. You know, everyone was laughing at me. I remember the French and German smiles, I remember it well, even British smiles I remember well. You know, now the same is happening with China. Everybody is laughing at us. Well, Baltics are following our road. But our dear brothers Poles, they are on the other side of the planet, still playing with big communist China, because that's a great tradition of Polish democracy from Soviet times. Oh, that's impressive. You know, I'm always telling to my brothers Poles, John Paul II would turn in his grave to see big revolutionary Poland playing with biggest communists of this planet. I hate that. Though we have great understanding in Prague, we have complete misunderstanding in Bratislava and Hungary. And look to the big Europe. Chancellor Scholz is kneeling in front of Chinese emperor. French are doing the same. New Labour Brits are doing the same. Where is this EU-China policy? I don't know. There is no policy. And before yesterday, our new Social Democrat star, Ruslanas Baranovas, who will lead the Taiwanese group in Lithuanian Parliament, he said, well, maybe we will fix that, as you know, we are ambitious enough. Maybe Lithuanian presidency of 27 will push EU to think strategically on China and strategically to think on Taiwan. Because this is where Trump administration will look. All the problems that we discuss right now will be judged by one question: on whose side you are? On my side or on China's side? And if we start asking this question, what I'm afraid what China will do, China will try to divide and rule Europe actively. Because of course many European capitals will be angered by Trump administration, and every centimeter of that anger will be used by China to lure those capitals in. So actually, situation might emerge like we had before Bucharest NATO summit. You remember Iraq war? And then New Europe sided with America, and old Europe sided with Russia. I think the same might happen with China on a bigger scale right now. We will see what is the next policy page of New Berlin that is being under elections. We will see what Macron will do. We will see what British Labour will do. I still have hopes in New Brussels that is more Baltic and Nordic and, I don't know, more advanced than most of the old capitals. And maybe they develop that understanding with Americans. But here I see a big problem. And the last issue where I see we are absolutely unable to tackle is understanding that we are at war with autocracies at global level. I'm reading now a great book given to me by Deputy President of National Endowment for Democracy, the same foundation that destroyed the Soviets and the Reagan. In this book that I'm still reading, the main conclusion is that most of the countries do not understand that the so-called soft power of autocracies is not soft anymore. It's sharp power. It destroys us from inside every moment of our life. It is active in political sphere, it is active in economic sphere, it is active in media sphere. They create a lot of radicalization of our societies. They are actively involved through all the Twitters and Facebooks and trolls and so on and so on. And most of the West do not take it seriously. Americans, they are like babies even to compare us with Europeans. But even in Europe, you have a lot of differences. We take it seriously on the front lines because we are attacked so many times by those new kind of hybrid weapons, but Europeans don't take it seriously. And look to the political landscape in our countries. We have more and more radicals. We are more and more under attack. It's more and more difficult for classical parties to keep it working. I hope those will be the years when we prevent it, then we grow the teeth and muscles and strategic brain, and we defeat it. But I would say we are like in full. I'm afraid that we might even fall to 38 and do another Chamberlain gesture of peace with Russia, and that will lead us to the Third World War. But I think what we are kind of closer to 41 and 42. We're still not in Casablanca, where Reagan and Churchill shake each other's hand and said, okay, annihilation, full capitulation. We are far from it. And we have like two options. Either we do the right thing now when we are still civilized, when we are still not killed, when we can still do it with kind of soft little civilized measures, or we go to the war. And then we will wake up. We will remember all those statements. We will look to that little interview with Pavilionis and, we will say, oh, again, they were right. But after a lot of blood, a lot of territory lost, a lot of disaster that war usually brings. And I really feel with all my blood and centimeters that this axis of evil is preparing for the war. It's already starting. And if we just behave like normal, we will have a war. That's guaranteed. If we use huge economic power that we still have into our hands and turn it into defense, we are 20 times richer than Russia. 20. China is still not the dominant military power. But if we use those years, we don't have a lot of them. We have 1, 2, 3 years maximum. If we let Chinese and Russians to divide us, also from our American brothers and sisters, if we're not wise enough to go under the skin of Trumpist administration and create that transatlantic wall, glue it with Indo-Pacific world, glue it with all those democracies in Indo-Pacific that is an imminent attack, because China is learning and they will attack that wall and divide, like Russians are doing today. So we still have time to stop it. You know, NATO, some Indo-Pacific NATO that is being created is one option. Global NATO is another option. And I will start by my most romantic dream that I'm always repeating. Speechwriter Reagan, Mark Palmer, who was still alive during my term in DC. We were great friends. He went to my embassy. I received some prize from this man, and he said, "Žygis, I beg you, please fight for the community of democracies to turn into United Nations of democracies. International system is paralyzed by autocracies. It's a joke. We have no international law, no international system. We are hijacked by them. So if we do not create a global organization of democracies that will use every centimeter of its power to defend our freedoms, to make a strong fence, but also to push the autocracies out, like from Georgia today. Who are those Georgian Dream representatives? Thieves, who sit in the pocket of one Russian oligarch. So if we were wise enough to push similar oligarch from Moldova, why can't we introduce little sanctions to Bidzina, who is a French citizen, whose money is in France? If we are so weak and stupid, so we are losing Georgia, then we can lose all the hopes for the Caucasus. We might lose Moldova very soon. It's so fragile. It's like that. We might lose Ukraine. We might start losing our territories. So it's stupid to lose. Let's win, guys. And for this, we have to have a great plan. We have Dutch Secretary General. We have wise and rich capitals all around. We have our strange Viking experience. Glue it together, and we're winning again.
Thank you very much. Žygis, round of applause for this great address. Many topics were covered, starting from historical summit in Bucharest in 2008, quite notorious, of course, summit itself, and going to all the other challenges, and of course the opportunities, and the most recent ones in the Caucasus and in Georgia too. And of course, I could dwell on many points that Žygis talked about, but since we're not living in North Korea, but in Lithuania,
still,
yes. Let me ask you about these past 4 years, and what would you believe were the one or couple of the grave mistakes that we've done in our foreign policy, as we were in the government, as we now can reflect quite sincerely about what was achieved and what was not achieved. Could you point some of the mistakes that were made or underachievements, for example?
Well, maybe one of it that we, because we were living more or less at war. At war with Belarus first, with this migrant stuff, and Ukrainian war, where we supported their efforts as one of the biggest donors on the globe, to compare per capita, of course. And then this Chinese war. I think we didn't have time to explain all those changes to the nation. For our poor chairman of the party, it was difficult to combine many jobs, including being a very good foreign minister and party chairman, and go to each village, including in his own district, and explain about things like that. For the last 4 months, I was getting into every door of my own little district, I was speaking with everyone about those I was running just in foreign policy, and I managed to win for the third time in that district. But it is a hard work. It is a very hard work. I had to sacrifice a lot of foreign policy initiatives. I spent a lot of time in the dirt of Reagonių gatvė. That is, I don't know, kind of. Some people close to the mayor knows our little efforts to turn into civilization. You know, you have very simple people living also in Vilnius, and you have to explain it. And we had some elitistic explanations of the record in Rašytojų namai together with you, but this is, we have to explain it in each village, and we more or less lost Samogidia, you know, to those guys, to those stupid anti-Semitic guys there, and it's sad. So actually today, to my fraction, I proposed. We have a great institution here. They are very good to have those elitistic talks in the House of the Signatories of Independence Act, but you know, they have to go to each village and employ as members of parliament and speak with those people, because we speak the truth. There is no other scenario. Even though social democrats will have to follow our lead, because reality is just like it is. But we have to spend, I don't know, 40% of our time of each day of explaining of what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of which, not only politicians have to do that, of course, but we as a think tank are planning this kind of project too with Konrad Adenauer Stiftung next year, and having a series of events in various smaller cities within Lithuania. But we have hands raised in the audience, and I would like to give mic to the... Yes, please. You could come here. You could come here because the camera is...
go to the mountain, or should the mountain come?
Please. You should go to the mountain.
Then you will be in the video, on the film.
And can you hear me? Yeah, thank you, Žygimantas. And thank you for your nice words about Sweden. That's always nice. And I really hope that sort of Europe can step up and meet the challenges the year ahead. But in your tour d'horizon, you didn't mention India. And I think it's a tipping country, whatever you call it. I mean, they have always seen Russia, Soviet Union as a counterbalance to China. They will hopefully understand it's not anymore a counterbalance to China. It's becoming more and more colony. So what's your reading of India? And they opened an embassy here, so...
When I was speaking about China, I was always looking to Indian diplomat we have with us. And as you know, during my last months, I decided to become a chairman of Indian Friendship Group. That is like strange for a person like me who was always fighting Russians on the Eastern front lines. And here we have Andrius Vyšniauskas, former member of our parliament, who was the most active with Indo-Pacific region at all. Yes, we are humbled and honored that after 30 years of thinking to open or not an embassy in Vilnius, this great country opened an embassy, and it is kind of symbolic for me personally, because my grandfather, Vladas Sipaitis, was sent to Siberia because he was in love with India. He was belonging to some groups that was painting India and so on. It was a formal reason that the stupid intellectual have to be removed to concentration camps. So he never came to India, and I never came to India. So I hope I will come during that term. But there is a big interest, and when I tried to lead that group again, the most powerful social democrat, Juozas Olekas, said, no, this is mine, as well as America. That's an interesting choice for most important social democrats. So no, we understand the power and importance. Many businessmen that were saved from Chinese sanctions because they moved their trade from China to India. And I think this is just the beginning. It's a long road, as this country is big, and Indo-Pacific is big, but also another most powerful former person of my Parliament, Victoria Chimilytė, she initiated the group. The only group that she wants to lead is Indo-Pacific group that covers the whole region. And my dream was, for example, to have a biggest conference on Indo-Pacific strategies in Vilnius in Parliament, because we were the first country to sign formally Indo-Pacific strategy with Americans. Not many countries in EU have such a strategy of cooperation within the Pacific region. So why don't we sit together as Europeans and deepen our understanding, and we start act together, because we are, you know, Vilnius, Lithuania is 1/3 of New York still. And if we are together, we are not so small, and we have to do it, because for India, for other countries of that region, they do not steal Europe as their policy target. You know, they are fighting with those big giants, Americans, Russians, but Europe, like even I told it to Taiwanese foreign minister yesterday. I said, guys, we're still fighting between China and America. And here we are, Europe, you know. Look to us. We are not so small. So we need to have an effort to convince them to think about us. But as I said, we are in pre-Bucharest here on that. We don't have a strategic thinking. We are corrupted by communist China money and investment. And, you know, and it will lead to the war and huge losses. In a way, Europeans lost many money because they were not listening to us when they introduced finally sanctions to Russia, still mild sanctions, but why to lose money when you can invest into the future? And it will happen with China. We will lose all the money. We are already losing, but we are not recognizing it. So why don't we act strategically? So yes, we are very happy with your presence here.
Thank you. Since we are, I don't see any hands raised. Well, definitely one of the most important countries that Lithuania follows constantly is Germany, right? We are having now a turbulence in the German government at this very moment in the November of 2024, when we are looking forward for the snap election in February, most likely, and next year. But I wonder, since we're sort of reflecting on the past 4 years of the Soviet government, the Scholz speech in February 2022, just after the war started in Ukraine, the famous Zeitenwende speech, was praised, of course, by many people, and there's still now a discourse on whether this Zeitenwende really is there in Germany. I'm not talking only about the numbers, you know, the defense spending, all the material aspects of the issue, but more on the sort of a mindset issue of the Germans. Žygis, I wonder, you have constantly a dialogue with with all the political parties in the Bundestag and in the Gesamt of Germany. How would you assess this question of the Zeitenwende? Whether it is there really a Zeitenwende, or is it now at least we have this division between the CDU, which really aims for a real Zeitenwende, and SPD, who are willing to go with this slow Zeitenwende, if I may say. Žygis.
Well, in my mind, the Germans are always like huge, rusty, heavy train. They move, and they move the world. But the change is so little. But if they change a centimeter in Berlin, we have kilometer changes in our region. So yes, you have to work with Berlin. To remember, 20, 30 years ago, I remember going to Berlin like a young diplomat and trying to explain something about Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. They were laughing at us. They were siding with the Russians at all levels. And that's when, as EU director, in 2004 I created Lithuanian German Forum, and I started to work under the skin of Germans, as I said, with all the parties, with business formations, to compare Schröder times and current times. Germany moved, transformed the most to the right direction. The love story started with Kubilius and Verheugen, who was enlargement commissioner. He was the best person ever. He loved us. He said, "You are the shining star of negotiations. My God, Kubilius, you transformed this country beyond recognition." And we really started to grow by like 10% GDP a year. Then it was Grybauskaitė Merkel love story at the highest level. Well, that was the beginning of German brigade. Then von der Leyen was defense minister. She put first German troops here because we love Germans. And you don't have a lot of countries that love Germans. But to reply on the 4 years, what happened, interestingly, so it was a lead project, Verheugen, Kubilius love story, Merkel, Grybauskaitė love story. When I noticed those, I couldn't call them kids, okay, young generation of ministers coming, when I noticed that Gabrielius honestly wants to visit Paris and Berlin as first capitals, I was shocked. Because if you would ask all generation Lithuanian what he thinks about German, it's usually like every Poles what they think about German. They just Molotov-Ribbentrop, they divide and rule together with the Russians. But no, this young generation truly believed into German love story, and relations that we had between Gabriel, and we still have between Gabrielius and German foreign minister, they're amazing. The relations that I have with, for example, Michael Roth, German chairman of Foreign Affairs Committee, social democrat, he calls me the best friend on this planet. Well, just like that. And we just returned from Tbilisi. We were twice in Tbilisi, twice in Kiev, and I'm now arranging another trip to Kiev with him. So, and also Germans, they are experimenting their military leadership in Lithuania. Do you think this brigade is something that is very important for us? No. This is mostly important for German military leadership. If this brigade story goes well, they might do the same story in Germany. But that's why I'm so unhappy with those stupid anti-Semitic element in our body, because it spoils the game. I think this is a nice, great Kremlin invention to spoil the German leadership game. I hope it doesn't work. I hope we stop that stupid game together. But this is a great trick of somebody in the East to stop the German leadership game in Lithuania.
Right. Of course, Žygis did not want to say that the German brigade is unimportant for us. This is massively important, of course. I just wonder about the tomorrow headline, in the newspaper. The last question, Federico, please. You raise your hand. Have your question, please. Or
thank you very much, first of all, for a very inspiring keynote, very insightful. You mentioned that we are 20 times richer than the Russians, and therefore we have the financial space to invest massively in defense. You are obviously meaning the European horizon when you say that, European investment in defense. And you also said, for the first time, we have a Lithuanian defense minister in Europe. And then you immediately corrected yourself, defense industry minister, which is an important, and this, I come to my question. I mean, we have done huge steps ahead, and I'm sure that under Kubilius' leadership we will make many more steps ahead. But we are still somehow laying the technical ground. I mean, we are trying to create an internal market, on defense, we are doing work on joint procurement, we will do maybe work on European DARPA and defense research, etc. But the problem, if when push comes to shove, will be political, right? There are substantive foreign policy disagreements that remain between the member states, and it is not entirely clear what are the best ways, institutional, political, to foster convergence, to make Union a real geopolitical player, not only at the level of the technical facilities, but a player that is able to make decisions when it comes to to having the need to make them. So what are your thoughts on, have we made progress in that direction, and how can we make further progress? Is it institutional reform, qualified majority voting? I mean, what do we have to do to progress?
Thank you. Please, Žygis, very briefly.
Well, our former President Grybauskaitė said, if Trump is elected, we will not have time to discuss European defense. And Trump is elected. So I think we have no time to discuss. We are very slow. When I saw the hearings of Andrius Kubilius in the European Parliament, half of the time I was laughing. Because questions, they were so stupid and naive. Like,
in what sense?
Like, one Spanish guy was asking, why do you want to militarize EU? I want to spend all the money for pensions. What? Why can't you stop the flooding in Spain instead of militarizing EU?
Yes, because Kubilius is, of course, responsible for everything.
Yes. I was laughing and crying at the same time because this is so stupid. Another great example that Kubilius used in those hearings. Russians today, because they are now behaving like Hitler in 42, they are like stepping on gas and putting all the economy on military track. So Russians, in a half a year, they produce the whole amount of German military production that they have. Like each half a year, they produce another Germany. This is the size of our defense. So if they continue like that in another year or two, we cannot defend ourselves today. And they are building a muscle together with Chinese and North Koreans, who has many people, by the way, to die. And if they win, they will concentrate in Belarus and they will just attack us. So what's that? So if I would be Andrius Kubilius and von der Leyen in one person, I would put all the money in defense right now. If we were able to gather 700 billion for fighting pandemic, borrowing it, and fighting it quite successfully, we cannot deliver 15 million to Ukrainians because of stupid Hungarians. So borrow 300, borrow 400 billion now. Create all the ammunitions you need, create all the logistic you need, recreate German and Dutch and Swedish military, and actually Lithuanian high-tech military industry. The mere fact that German and biggest American enterprises and Taiwanese even are coming here together with Ukrainians, we are starting to create a joint military ventures. This is the way that we can defend ourselves. Can you imagine, you put together our European money that we have a lot in our pockets, added with Ukrainian experience on the front line. They're war gods. They destroyed the North Fleet of Russians just with brain and great war drones that are actually today produced in Latvia already. Good Latvian step. We can do everything, and actually we can do it in harmony with Americans because they also need to learn, because they will focus on what China might do with Taiwan very soon. But we have to think strategically. I feel that energy in New Brussels. I feel that energy in the eyes of von der Leyen, who came to the parliament on May 9th, in the eyes of Kubilius, who has nothing to lose. He did so much and he will fight till then with all those stupid Europeans, but with those naive Europeans. He will fight with them to do it. But I just ask myself, if Rome, because you are from Rome, if Madrid, if those southern capitals who are not investing into defense, even France will talk so loud, will they actually do the job, or they will just continue speaking and talking loud and doing nothing? So if we would start doing something at least with 2 fingers we have, that would be already enough. Because Russia is Texas-sized economy that is scaring us to death. It's like a little kid with a great knife walking into the greatest street of Rome, and all those aristocrats are closing the doors because this kid can hurt the little leg. Imprison these guys. Put some Lithuanian sock on this head. he's nobody. But we don't think like that. We're scared to death. Right?
Yes, Žygis is definitely using the situation that he's no longer an official member of a government. So that's an occasion for Žygis to have his rhetoric free. But indeed, we all see that Žygis cares a lot, and the work that was done in the previous 4 years. I think most of the people in this auditorium should appreciate it. And right, great thanks for Žygis for his time, for his keynote, for this engaging talk that we had. We are going to have 25 minutes of a break. We have this beautiful, nice coffee and snacks there. In the meantime, we have to prepare all the arrangement because we will have a video addressed by Mantas Adomėnas, joining us from Warsaw, and we will proceed with our conference. Thank you very much, and see you in 25 minutes. Ta-ta!